Thank you, Presiding Officer. To ask the First Minister whether the Scottish Government still has a policy of a presumption against any new oil and gas licences.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, oil and gas continues to play an important part in Scotland's energy transition. Our focus is on meeting energy security needs, reducing emissions in line with climate goals, and ensuring that just transition for workforces as North Sea oil and gas resources inevitably decline. As part of this approach, our draft energy strategy and just transition plan consulted on a presumption against licensing of new exploration of oil and gas. We've never proposed a position of no new licensing at all. I've gone on record to say that I think it's the wrong decision to approve Rosebank at a time when the world is literally on fire, when the planet is burning, when we have seen the most devastating impacts of the climate catastrophe. Instead of showing climate leadership, what we have from the UK Government is complete and utter climate denial, Presiding Officer. Unlike the Conservatives, we're not ignoring the scale of the climate crisis that is befalling our planet. We'll work with the energy industry to accelerate that transition to net zero where we can.
Douglas Lumsden.
Presiding Officer, the First Minister makes one trip up to Aberdeen and then masquerades as the saviour of the oil and gas industry. He must think the people of the North East are buttoned up the back. He's against Cambo, he's against Rosebank, and his government still has a presumption against any new oil and gas licences. So will the First Minister tell the Chamber today why he is in favour of importing more oil and gas, stopping new investment, which, as the First Minister knows, means throwing away thousands of livelihoods on the scrap heap?
First Minister.
Of course, if Douglas Ross knew what he was talking about, he would know that the vast majority of oil that is extracted from the North Sea gets exported overseas, Presiding Officer. But what's clear to me, what's clear to the people of Scotland, what's clear to the people of the North East is that Westminster is not working for Scotland. For decades, Presiding Officer, the Conservatives have been telling the people of Scotland that Scotland's oil is running out. Now, all of a sudden, they're pretending that it's going to be lasting forever. Successive UK governments,
let's hear
Tory
the First Minister,
Labour, have used the North East as a cash cow, squandering £400 billion in today's prices of oil and gas revenue. So whether it's the Conservatives or Labour, whose policies, of course, could end up throwing 100,000 workers on the scrap heap, Westminster can't be trusted with Scotland's natural resources. It's high time, Presiding Officer, high time that Scotland's energy was in Scotland's hands, so we can ensure cheaper bills, so we can ensure that we unleash the economic potential of the green revolution, and, of course, that we can help to tackle the climate crisis, Presiding Officer.
Kevin Stewart.
Thank you, Presiding Officer, and I welcome the First Minister's visit to Aberdeen this week and the engagement that he has had with the oil and gas sector. Can I ask the First Minister if that engagement with the oil and gas sector will continue, in particular regarding retaining and increasing the vital investment needed to deliver a just transition, following the deeply concerning warnings that Labour's aggressive plans for the North Sea will put 100,000 jobs at risk, which is really serious for my constituents in Aberdeen, the North East and beyond.
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, many of those in the North East of Scotland will have just seen the fact that Kevin Stewart is rightly standing up for his constituents, not using Scottish Government figures, but using industry figures that say that Labour's plans could risk up to 100,000 jobs, and we'll hear Labour laughing at Kevin Stewart, laughing at the people of Aberdeen, and laughing at our oil and gas workers, who, of course, have done an incredible job for Scotland over decades and continue to do an excellent job for Scotland. Let me say this much. Let me reiterate what I've already said in previous exchanges, Presiding Officer, is this: that we support in the SNP a windfall tax. Of that there is no doubt. What we don't support is aggressive plans by Labour, not just to increase that windfall tax, but of course to raid the North East so they can pay for new nuclear power plants in England, Presiding Officer. That is unfair. That is not acceptable. So we believe in accelerating that transition to net zero. The oil and gas workers, who are incredibly skilled, who have incredible expertise, will be absolutely vital to that just transition. I can promise them, so long as the SNP is in government, we'll protect them from those damaging plans by Keir Starmer, by Labour, which would end up seeing them thrown on the scrap heap.